So you've taken coding courses, built some personal projects, studied leak code, and got through the interview. But you realize you have no idea what a data job at a company actually looks like. What should you expect, and how does working on large projects differ from the personal or classwork you've done so far? An important first step is getting your environment set up in a way that's comfortable for you. This will probably include things like IDEs such as VS Code, Cloud Portals, Notepad++, Power BI or Tableau, and whatever other tools you'll be using. You also want to get them connected to source control, and hopefully you've been using Git for your personal work, but it will become more of a critical step now that you're part of a larger team. Then you'll probably be putting in a lot of access requests to get access to resources that you'll need to be working with. The amount of hoops you have to jump through will depend on the company. It's smart to get these things going early while you'll probably be doing a lot of onboarding admin, so you don't have to deal with it when the project work actually starts. Then there will be communication tools to set up and get used to, probably Slack or Teams for chat and Zoom or Teams for calls. Some companies like doing cameras on, some companies like doing cameras off. It's awkward when you don't know. Even if you're on site, especially with how things are today, you'll probably have some team members working remote, so expect to spend a lot of time in virtual meetings. Ask if the company uses chat channels and make sure you get included in as many relevant ones as possible so you can start getting in the loop on things. In my experience, it takes about an average of 2 weeks to get up and running to the point where you can actually take on any work. It's always an awkward period where you feel like you should be proving yourself, but you can't actually do anything yet. The fastest this lasted for me was 4 days. I joined on a Monday and then deployed and demoed a minor change on a Thursday. The longest was about 2 months from being hired to actually doing any engineering, and I felt pretty certain that they made a mistake and didn't actually need me there. The involvement of your manager, lead, team members will vary. It's nice when they can take the time to walk you through things, but it's also good to be comfortable exploring data and at least figuring out how to navigate around the data and code on your own. A lot of times you got hired because they're backlogged and need help, and so they don't take the time to onboard somebody properly. And you should probably get used to this kind of poor planning because there's going to be more of that. And speaking of poor planning, let's talk about project management. You'll probably come across some sort of work tracking tool like Jira or Azure DevOps, and this will probably contain a list of backlog items or work to be done. These items will probably be displayed on a board as cards, and then you move them from to do, active, and done. And it can get a lot more complex if the company has a well-defined workflow. This will either be a very useful tool to help manage your day, or an administrative disaster that just adds overhead and no value. These tools will often have built-in documentation wikis, and sometimes connect your source control to help with CICD. CICD stands for Continuous Integration, Continuous Deployment. So you should be operating with at least development, QA, and production environment. Traditionally, you'd build your code in dev and then manually deploy it into QA, and when it passes user acceptance, you would manually deploy it into production. CICD is the automation of this entire process. Since the code is in source control, it can be deployed out to various environments when specific criteria is met, and it reduces a lot of the manual effort. Analytics seems less into deployment automation than software teams, so you may not be exposed to CICD. Some other key terms you'll come across are stand-ups, which are ideally short 15-minute meetings for the team to get together and discuss what they have going on and any problems they're up against. But usually this is corrupted into a status report for management or PMs, and you end up reporting what could have just been looked up in Jira. Agile is a method of development that takes the multi-year project planning cycle and shrinks it down to a 1 to 2 week planning cycle. This is to account for the fact that users change what they want approximately 45 seconds after the planning is over. Agile can be distilled down into making crappy prototypes until somebody goes, "Ooh, I actually like that." And then you put the effort into making that specific thing good. Scrum is a framework to be an Agile team. It mostly misses the entire point of Agile development, but companies love it because they can say they're Agile without changing too much of their project management processes. And this is probably a topic for another time. Sprints or iterations are the short planning cycles that work is broken down into. They usually last about 2 weeks. The idea is at the start of a sprint, you know what you'll be accountable for over the next 2 weeks. And then there shouldn't be any new priority items injected during this period. This works great if all you do is new development, but it kind of falls apart when you have to do system support. It's also a problem with analysts because ad hoc quick response requests for information are the normal. Now, the specifics will vary between companies, and I've worked for 10-person startups to 150,000 employee tech companies and everywhere in between. And oddly, I haven't really seen a trend on which types of companies will be good or bad at the onboarding process. If you're interested in comparing startups to the mega corporations, give this video a like and we might do that in a future video. Of course, none of this matters if you haven't gotten that offer yet. So if you're still interviewing or holding out for that perfect job, be sure to check out this video on how to handle those interviews.